There is no bigger question for the stock market and for the entire world right now than when the war in Ukraine is going to end. History tells us that for a war to end, both sides have to think that they will be better off by reaching a settlement. This is likely to occur only after one side has achieved a dominant position on the battlefield that becomes too costly for the other side to reverse undo. In other words, the precondition for a negotiated settlement is the emergence of a clear winner. Over the past few weeks, the war has been shifting in favor of Russia. Will the US, Ukraine's biggest backer, agree to a negotiated settlement, or would it push the stakes up even higher? How will the pending global food crisis sway Biden's decision? Hi, I'm David Wu, a former Wall Street investment strategist with a 20-year track record of making actionable predictions about major global change. Welcome to the Money Game, where I take on groupthink, propaganda, and conspiracy theories in my critical analysis of markets, politics, and economics. Before we begin, I invite you to subscribe to my channel, David Wu Unbound, and get notified when a new video comes out. As the fog of war in Ukraine is slowly lifting, it is more and more clear which side has the upper hand. Having gained control over the strategically important towns of Popasnaya and Izium, the Russian offensive in the Donbas region is accelerating this week. This is forcing the Ukrainian side to redeploy troops at the cost of ceding territory in the south to defend the city of Severodonetsk, the last Ukrainian stronghold in the Luhansk Oblast. Russian troops, having surrounded Severodonetsk on three sides, have launched their assault on the city in its twin Lysychansk. Their fall will leave the whole of Luhansk region under Russian control. The fall of the region will also seriously weaken the capabilities of the Ukrainian army. Before the war, it was thought that the 40,000 troops of the 10 brigades that made up Ukraine's joint forces operation in the east were the best equipped and best trained soldiers that Ukraine had. There's evidence now that they're surrendering or even deserting in greater numbers. As for casualties, President Zelensky admitted this week that as many as 100 Ukrainian soldiers are dying in the east every single day. Some say substantially more. Zelensky now says that the war would only come to a conclusive halt at the negotiating table. Assuming Russia succeeds in taking Severodonetsk over the next 2 weeks, should we expect serious negotiations to start after that? Ukraine's ability to fight on in this war depends on just one thing: the aid it receives from the United States and from the European Union. A British official was quoted as saying this week, the Ukrainians will not do anything without the UK and the US in the room. We should assume, therefore, that the US and Europe will have the final say on whether it's time for a negotiated settlement and what the parameters of the negotiations will be. The stock market should take heart that US public support for the war is waning. A recent poll shows that 51% of Americans said it is more important to limit the damage to the US economy versus 45% of Americans who said it is more important to sanction Russia as effectively as possible. Only 1 month ago, the results were the opposite. Biden's approval rating is suffering as Americans wake up to the high price that they are paying for the US sanctions against Russia. The same poll also shows that just 21% of Americans say that they have a great deal of confidence in Biden's ability to handle the situation in Ukraine, versus 39% with hardly any confidence. In Davos, at the yearly WEF conference, former U.S. Secretary of State Henry A. Kissinger called for facing the reality of the situation in Ukraine on Monday this week. He said that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia in negotiations to end the war. That said, investors who want to bottom fish in the stock market should not get ahead of themselves. So far, there are no signs that shifting public opinion about the war is influencing the attitude of the Biden administration. Indeed, Biden's admission this week that high energy prices are part of the overall plan for the transition to renewables suggests that he's viewing the economic shock of the war as glass half full.
When it comes to the gas prices, we're going through an incredible transition that is taking place that, God willing, when it's over, will be stronger and the world will be stronger and less reliant on fossil fuels when this is over.
The overarching goal of transitioning to green energy is clearly coming at the expense of the prosperity of their citizens. Wheat, corn, rice, and sugar are the four most important primary crops in the world. Around 50% of the world's dietary energy supply comes from our consumption of cereal. Given the substitutability between the different cereal crops for human consumption and animal feed, their prices tend to be correlated. Before the war, Russia and Ukraine were the biggest and the fifth biggest exporter of wheat, respectively. Russia is also the world's largest fertilizer exporter, accounting for 23% of ammonia exports and 21% of potash exports.
Global hunger levels are at a new high. In just 2 years, the number of severely food insecure people has doubled, from 135 million pre-pandemic to 276 million today.
Partly as a result of the West's sanctions against Russia and the Russian blockade of Ukraine's Black Sea ports, food prices have skyrocketed around the world. Wheat prices have gone up 60% over the past year, while corn price and rice price have gone up over 25%. This rise may not have such an important impact on rich countries, but for poor countries, this is nothing short of a disaster. The governor of the Bank of England said as much, warning that apocalyptic food prices caused by the war could have disastrous impact on the world's poor. The Secretary General of the UN last week warned that the war in Ukraine is stoking a global food crisis. This is not a new story. Nearly 193 million people in 53 countries face acute food insecurity in 2021, a jump of 40 million compared with the year before. The number will be much higher in 2022 as the result of the Russia-Ukraine war.
Leaders told me that because of the war in Ukraine, on top of the other crises they face, they fear this dangerous situation could tip into catastrophe.
Wrap your head around the figures. 3 million children die from hunger every year. This year, it will be far, far worse. The war in Ukraine has unleashed a food crisis that will kill many more people than the war itself. People may disagree about whether high energy prices are good or bad, but nobody can agree that high food prices and starvation are good. If the food crisis does not convince the European and the US leadership to end the war, then nothing will. Putin offered this week to open a humanitarian channel for ships carrying food to leave Ukraine in exchange for the lifting of some sanctions. Washington is facing a crucial decision in the next 2 weeks. Will Biden agree to Russia's offer, or will he, on the contrary, escalate by sending advanced anti-ship weapons to Ukraine to destroy Russia's Black Sea fleet, in the words of one Ukrainian official? The stock market can go up or down 10% depending on Biden's decision. But regardless of whether you own stocks or not, let's hope Biden does the right thing and puts the fate and suffering of the global poor above whatever strategic gain against Russia he believes the U.S. may achieve. If you got something out of this program, please subscribe to my channel and hit like. If you want to learn more, especially about my investment strategy, come visit us at davidwuunbound.com. Thank you for listening.